Hello and welcome to another discussion about improv and money. I started these videos, discussions, interviews, because last week I posted something in our improv community about improv and money, and it set off a massive discussion, and a handful of brave people put their hand up to come onto camera and talk a bit about their experiences, which has been really, really useful so far. So this is the third one. And today I'm talking to Pete. Good morning, Pete.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you
Thank you
for
for
having me.
volunteering.
That's okay. Glad to be here. I'm not sure how
So
useful it'll
yeah,
be, but
so
I'll see what I say.
exactly. We'll see what comes through. It'll all be good. So yeah, so do you just want to tell people a bit about yourself, like what you do for your day job, and then we'll talk about a bit more about like your experience and journey through improv.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my day job is completely unrelated to improv or anything theatrical in nature.
Yeah.
I do cybersecurity consultancy,
Okay.
so it's very technical and boring, and yeah, I don't enjoy it too much, but it pays the bills. And then I do
Yeah.
improv as a hobby, which I actually enjoy. Even though at this point it's sort of like a second job with the amount of time and that I'm spending on it. Um, yeah, I guess my improv journey, I started taking courses at the bit.
Yeah.
So I'm born and raised in Bristol. I went to uni in Manchester, then came back to Bristol to work afterwards, so that I could stay at my parents' flat and not
Yeah.
have to pay rent, which was great. But luckily I did that because then I discovered the bit on my way to walk. I walked past for a bit, so I just saw flyers now and I saw the poster and everything. I was like, okay, that looks like fun. So I started seeing shows now, and then I did the like the taster lesson, and I really enjoyed that. And then I started doing the courses. That was that was pre-COVID. That must have been 2018 or 2019, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, and then from there, it just spiraled into more and more courses, when going up the levels, and then applying for up shows and doing those, and then directing my own up show, which was Tales from a Wasteland,
Oh, great.
which
Yeah.
which now is performing very regularly, about once a month, and we go Camden Fringe and whatnot. Um, Also making some shows just with my friends who I enjoy doing improv with, like the Grumpkins, which I do with Emma T,
Yeah.
the award-winning improviser. Um,
She's everywhere.
oh yes, yeah, you'll see this a lot in
Yeah.
person. Yeah, she's great. And then I also started producing my own shows. So I did the Improv Spotlight about it would have been just over 2 years ago now, at the People's Republic. That was my first experience in putting on my own showing, doing all the organization, doing all the admin for it. That was a lot of fun, and that's continued and is now performing at the bit. Um, and then also now I'm just doing sort of occasional one-offs like Task Lord, last November, which was a really big show which we produced. That took a year to produce. That was crazy.
Wow.
So I might do sort of more occasional stuff like that. But that's sort of where I currently am with my journey. So I've got like one or two ongoing recurring shows in Wasteland and Spotlight, and then also doing the occasional random stuff, whatever I find fun. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how you describe it as a second job. I think a lot of hobbies turn into second jobs, to be honest, because that's where there's so much that they give us different things to our day job perhaps, and different social community and different way of expressing ourselves. So it's great to be in Bristol where there's such a kind of, it's one of the reasons I moved here. In fact, it's like I knew there was an improv theatre here, and it's like, oh yeah, I can get back into improv. If I end up living, and also why I live kind of in the area I live in. So I was like, I want to be within walking distance, like rental flats within walking distance of all the things I want to be doing, so that the distance doesn't put me off going there. But yeah, it's been really good. So what's been so these conversations about improv and money. So what has been your experience as far as you know, with your shows? Do you have the intention to try and make money or break even? Have you ever had shows that have really worked financially, or is it not really a consideration? Like, how do you marry the two things together?
Yeah, so the money side is definitely not the aim, and it's not a consideration for me, to be honest. It's purely for the love of the game. It's purely because I really enjoy seeing shows and being in shows. And I found that the best way to be in a show, or the best way to see a show which you really want to see, is just to make it yourself.
Yeah,
Which is why I started doing the Spotlight, why I did Raceland. It's just like, I want to see that. I want to see a post-apocalyptic show. Okay, I'll just make it and I'll put it on. And there we go.
yeah,
So it's, the money has never really been a aspect. It only became conscious to me when I started making a lot of sales. So like, I don't know if people know about this, but you don't need to declare money or declare tax unless you hit a certain amount of income,
yeah,
which is 1,000 a year outside of your job. So as soon as I started getting to that level of sales in a year, I was like, oh God, okay, maybe I need to actually think about this. And I need to legally do a tax return, and legally I have to declare all the income and the expenses.
yeah,
That's when it became definitely more like a second job. At the moment, I think I just did my tax return for the last year, and I think it came to about 5,000 income from all the sales. And I just do shows, so I don't do any mentoring or coaching or teaching. This is purely from putting on shows. But saying that, it sounds like a lot of money, but the expenses came to about 4,000. So
yeah,
it
yeah,
really,
yeah. That's
it
not
really
profit,
was.
everybody. That's just
Yeah,
like the
no,
amount of money that came in, which still is like,
yeah.
is, you know, it's good to talk about figures, and it's good to see that yes, that much money came in, and then it costs this much to actually put the show on in the first place.
Yeah, and then I also had to pay tax on that. So
Yeah.
overall, the
So
non,
£1,000 minus tax.
yeah, exactly. It came to about £500. I don't know how, because it shouldn't be 50% tax, but somehow it got, my tax system and HMRC decided that was the case, and I don't care about money or know about money enough to argue with that.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, so the expenses are big, even though there's a lot of sales, because we do a lot of shows where we have to pay the venue a higher cost.
yeah,
We end up sometimes not making any money, sometimes even making a big loss,
yeah,
but then other times making a lot of money. It's a
yeah,
very weird balancing act.
yeah,
To give some examples, like we did the tobacco factory in January, we had to pay for that, and that was £1,200 for 2 nights, which is the most amount of money we've ever spent on a show.
yeah,
Let alone, you know, the promo, the marketing and all that, which must have been an extra 50 quid or whatever. Um, we that was a really weird case, because we sold out the first night and we made like a third of the seats of the second night, and we still had to pay them money. It came to about £100 loss. So I
okay,
wouldn't recommend doing Tobacco Factory unless you're sure that you're going to like sell out both nights or sell out the night that you're doing.
yeah,
Um, and then another example, we did Active Theatre, which is in the south in Bedminster. Not many people know about it. It
yeah,
was a new sort of thing we were trying, and we only sold a few tickets. We had like 5 people there, and we had made a loss of £200 on that show,
yeah,
which was horrible. But other shows we've sometimes made profits of like 500, 600, because the venue's only 200 and we sell like 60 tickets or whatever.
yeah,
And it's that feels like the whole improv career for me is good, successful shows paying for those bad shows, a sort of seesaw act. And I feel like it's never gotten to a point where I'm making more money than losing it. It's always in the middle
yeah.
somewhere.
It's kind of self-sustaining. rather than
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
else.
Just
Um,
about. I'm still having to put money in at the moment. I'm hoping it's going to be fully self-sustainable in another year or two. But I do occasionally have to put money in still for like photographers and
yeah,
videos and stuff. They cost a lot. They can be like £250 a night just to get one night photographed professionally.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I
it's
mean, I have to say though, you know, out of there's a couple of shows that have a very strong visual impact, like on social media, and Tales from the Wasteland is definitely one of them because
Mhm.
you know a lot of improv shows we don't really have costumes or props or anything like that. So photographing the shows, you get the energy and like if there's any particular great setups in the scene. But I think Tales from the Wasteland benefits because you have a very strong kind of visual identity for that show. Um, and you know, I imagine that that's something that helps to draw people into the show, even if they don't know it, because they're fans of post-apocalyptic kind of
Yeah.
stuff, and it's obvious that's what it is visually, even if you don't, you know, read the blurb in detail. So yeah. Um, so okay, so do you want to talk about like so your advice for people who want to put on shows and think about the financial side of it? Like, I mean, I think we've already talked about, you know, don't pay too much for a venue. Because I think the assumption as well is like if you're in an established theatre, then the fact that you're in that theatre will bring people in, but then maybe your experience is that that actually wasn't the case. So you know, if
Yeah.
people are starting to put on their own shows or thinking about putting on their own shows, like from the experiences you've had, like what would your advice be around marketing, promo, sales, booking venues? Like what have you learned from doing it?
Yeah, I think definitely, unless you're at the level which Wasteland might be, where we were doing fairly well and we're doing regular shows, we're able to take that risk. We have money in the business account
Yeah,
to sustain the risk that we're taking of
yeah,
paying for expensive venues and doing shows there. Um, I wouldn't recommend doing that if you're quite early on your journey or if you don't have much seed money or anything like that. Um, I would recommend going for venues which do a split profit share rather than a venue hire. There's a few people who do that, like the Alma Theatre is quite a good one for that. The Bit is a good one for that if you can get them to get you on the programming. Yeah, always going for those split profit ones where you're not risking anything.
yeah,
There might be a risk that you do badly and the venue might not have you back because of that, but at
yeah.
least you're lost money if you're worried about that.
Yeah, so with those, just to clarify, that's where you don't pay for the venue, but you split like the ticket price.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not paying anything to perform there. You're just splitting like 50/50 profit with a venue. Normally
Yeah,
there could be a scale. So if you sell this many, the more you sell, the more the scale is in your benefit. And it
yeah,
might be like 70/30 at the end sort of thing. I think that's
yeah.
how Rihanna does it.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And then if you do have to pay for stuff, splitting it with a group, if people can afford that makes it a lot easier. I think that's what we did initially with Raceland, but then eventually we had enough from the account. And with Spotlight, I just seeded it myself. I'm lucky to work in cybersecurity, which is a fairly good um, industry in terms of like money and stuff. So I'm able to seed my own business like that.
Yeah,
But obviously, I appreciate that's a very lucky position and a privileged position to be in, and not everyone can
yeah,
afford to do that. So if you can split the cost either with a venue or with your group, that's always better.
yeah, great.
Yeah, it's hard to know how to attract people and how to know when like what the magic formula or what the magic thing is that has gotten us high audience numbers in the past.
Yeah,
Sometimes it does just feel random.
yeah,
Sometimes you can just have a lot of people on one night and then you can do the exact same show in the exact same venue a few months later and you've got like half the audience,
yeah,
which has happened to us before. And it does just seem like luck a lot of the time. we've tried things like doing Instagram ads, or like at Camden Fringe, we did marketing in the street and flyering and stuff like that, and buying flyers and posters and putting them across the city. I think that helps a lot, but it's again hard to track how much that has helped in terms of selling tickets.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can just seem like you're pissing money up the wall, but then as long as you're making one or two or three tickets off the back of it, then maybe it'll be worth it, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was one of the discussions. It's like it's hard to track that kind of stuff. It's easier to track things online if you've got like your analytics in there to some extent. But yeah, it's hard to track kind of what works and what doesn't. So have you got like do you have like a fan base for the Tales of the Wasteland? Do you see some people like coming back quite a lot to see the show?
We've got a few, but not enough where it's noticeable. I think most of our fans are just people in the improv community who
Yeah.
might be watching it because it's improv anyway. Um, there's like one or two people, but most of the time they're like family or friends
Yeah.
who of the cast or anybody in it, and they first came to support people and then they ended up liking it, so now they come quite regularly, kind of thing. My wife is one of those. She's a great supporter. But again, yeah, not enough. It's quite weird. I had this with the Improv Spotlight at the People's Republic as well. We had quite good numbers every month, but we had barely any returning people. I would look at the names of who's bought a ticket, and most of the time they've never bought a ticket before. I don't know why that is the case either. It's just a trend I've noticed, but I'm not sure why or how to keep recurring people. I guess you wouldn't normally go to see a theatre show or a comedy show recurring. Obviously, because it's improv, it would be different each time. So you'd hope people would keep going, but maybe the psychology or the mindset just isn't there because improv is quite a new thing and people aren't used to going to see the same show regularly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, there was this discussion in the thread is like, do you market it as improv or theatre or comedy or bits of each? And so for people who might be maybe nervous about going to improv or actively disliking it because they've seen certain forms of it, it's like, yeah, getting people that aren't in the improv community to get involved and to enjoy the shows as well, I guess, is something that we're kind of discussing as a community, I think, for sure.
Yeah, and I think what you hinted at it earlier, but like I think Wasteland does fairly well because it's a heavily themed show, because it's
Yeah.
heavily genred. And I think, in my opinion, shows which lean heavily into that do better than generic improv shows.
Yeah.
Like Blame of Thrones is a recent example. I think they're doing fairly well because you know what you're getting. It's a Game of Thrones, it's a medieval thing. And audiences have a certain expectation, and even if they might not like improv or have seen bad improv before, then they'll come along for the genre and the theme.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're doing a generic improv show with a generic name, which is just, long form comedy or short form comedy or something, it's going to be a harder sell. At least at the moment, and in this country, it's going to be a harder sell. I'm sure elsewhere it will be easier. Like I think America has a lot easier job with generic long form because the culture's now. Whereas here, I think the culture's a lot more thematic narrative stuff. So the more you lean into that, the better you might do.
Yeah, and I think, my assumption is as well, because the US has like world famous improv schools. If you kind of put that in there somewhere, it's associated with this, then people have a history of kind of knowing what that is. But yeah, I think this comes back to what I was talking about with Steve yesterday. It's kind of, if you're running a show or making money in any form in improv, it's like a mini business. So it's like looking at it like a business, and any business, it's like, what's your USP? What's your unique selling point for your show? And like you're saying, if you've got a generic improv show, and there's quite a few of them, certainly in the city that we're living in, It's like, you know, why is your show different? And I think with Tales of the Wasteland, like I said, like, you know, that's visually and thematically very clear what kind of show it is, and it's improvised rather than the improv isn't like the lead on it. It's almost like that's the format of the theatre, but actually it's this type of show.
Yeah, I think you're right. The improv is definitely the secondary thing in our show. It's like you could just market it as a post-apocalyptic comedy theatre show, which also has improv. You know,
Yeah,
I think that's the bigger seller there, and I think that's the case with some of the other big shows as well. You could look at like some of the biggest improv shows in the UK, like Ostentatious
yeah,
is a parody of Jane Austen novels, which also happens to be improvised. Or
yeah,
Murder She Didn't Write is a whodunit Agatha Christie murder, which also happens to be improvised.
yeah.
It's sort of that you're parodying something and you're putting the improv twist on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so almost like tapping into a fan base that already exists, aka Jane
Mhm.
Austen fans or Agatha Christie murder mystery fans, or, you know, I've been to see Showstoppers a couple of times, and they're you
Mhm.
know, they do an improvised musical, and you know, their skill level is amazing. And actually, when I did a workshop with them at the Improv Theatre recently, when they did their show here, you know, one of the guys, Dylan, who was kind of front of house talking to the audience kind of role in the show, he was like, if we're not making something that's better than a scripted musical, why are we bothering? And I was just like, that blew my mind, because I was like, oh, okay, actually the way that they're kind of pitching their skill is like, this is going to be better than if you went to see a musical.
Mhm.
Which was kind of mind-boggling to me, because I'm like, oh, improv is just kind of not a lesser form, but it's a bit clunky sometimes because it's improv and blah blah blah, which is true. But that was almost like that was their goal, was to go, we want our show to be better than going to see Cats, for example, or, you know, a music. If you go and see a musical show that already exists, that's lovely, but you know, this, we're aiming to be better than a better experience than that, which I think was, yeah, mind blowing, really.
Yeah, no, I agree, but it does put. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a good or bad thing necessarily, but it seems to just be
Yeah,
the same
totally.
things.
Yeah, I mean, they're, you know, they're a
Um,
different level. They're an award-winning, you know, show, but it's almost like going, if that's their intention for their show, then that clearly comes through, I think, in the quality of
yeah.
what they provide. And that's not to say that that's what everybody should be aiming for. I just thought it's really interesting that they were very clear that that was their
Mhm.
intention of putting on the show.
Yeah, and I think in that environment, it is useful to add a bit more theatrical stuff into your show, um, like costumes, like a bit of set, musical production if you can do it, you know, special lights if you can do it. One thing we did in Wasteland is we hired a acting coach for a few sessions, called Gary from Bristol School of Acting. I'd recommend him. And he taught us basic theatrical stuff like stage blocking, positioning on the stage, projecting your voice,
Yeah,
how to come on as a character, all stuff which you would do in a normal non-improv theatre show.
yeah,
I I'd recommend people inject more of that into
yeah.
their improv shows, because then it does make it seem like you're watching a good generic theatre show, which happens to be improvised. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's always kind of, yeah, the improv skills are great, and then the acting theatre skills are an important part of making a show really
Yeah.
um watchable for the audience, and also, you know, more like, sort of less like improv and more like theatre, so the kind of lines are
Mhm.
blurred a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love learning lines. I mean, one thing I like which helps with that is having a in-character introduction. So a lot, not just coming on stage and being like, "Hi, this is an improv show. Can I get a suggestion of this or this or this?" But having it feel like the theatre show has started from the second that it starts, which is what we've been doing in Wasteland. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, so what are your top tips for people who are thinking of putting on shows? Like, what would you, people who are right at the beginning of their journey, like you were a little while ago, what would be your top tips? Or is there anything that you want to share that we haven't covered?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what helped me when I started. I think most of it was just really putting in the time and the effort to book shows, and not like a lot of us. I found what we currently do is book shows months in advance. So we might reach out to venues and we'll have shows booked like 8 months, sometimes even a year in advance.
Right.
And that's going to be a case with a lot of venues because of how their programming works.
Yeah.
And it's just getting ahead of the train and putting down the tracks that far in advance. If you want to have monthly shows like we are doing, then you need to have shows like way in advance booked, and to be reaching out to venues saying like, do you have spaces in February 2027?
Yeah.
That kind of thing, and
Yeah.
not just relying on getting one next month. So it's really being ahead of the game and having those admin and organization skills to be able to do that.
Yeah.
A lot of the time it's not skill, it's just putting in the time, and it's just which can be really hard, and that's probably not great advice. But
I think it's like anything though, like once you've done something once or twice, you build you kind of adopt your own systems for going, oh, I need to make sure that I've written down what I've done and who I've spoken to, and you
yeah,
organize your own kind of record keeping, and then you go, oh right, if I want to do this, then I know that I need to do these 4 things because I've done it twice already. So it's just kind of, it's all going to feel a bit uncomfortable and difficult the first time because it's not something you've done before. And then once you've booked, a couple of shows and you're like, oh, okay, I kind of understand how this works now. The sort of embodied experience of doing it is different.
yeah, and it is built. Yeah, and it's building up a repository, or like regular venues that you can perform to. Like we have a few on roster which we go between, like Bristol Folk House, Alma, Loco Club is now one of those, Head and
Yeah.
Chicken bit. And once you have enough, then you can just sort of go from month to
Yeah.
month between those. Yeah.
Brilliant.
It's just reaching out to people. It's just not being afraid to email people and just try, and not being upset that they don't reply.
Yeah.
Because that is a major issue I found, is the reply rate from the venues is probably like 33%. I
Right.
get ghosted on 2/3 of the emails that I send to venues, and I keep trying to find new venues to perform at, but I just don't get replies, and it is very disheartening. But it's just you just got to keep on. Eventually, there will be some venue which replies to you, and it'll be good. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing something in business when I first started, and they were like, sometimes you might have to ask 7 times until you get a yes, and you're just like, okay, right. So yeah, asking once and then going, oh, they obviously didn't want. Yeah, it's like that, the persistence effect of just going, okay, let me just send another message, let me just remind them I'm here, let me just like get the energy out there, and yeah, kind of creating that, um, the creating the opportunities for yourself, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, and I think having a bit of uh, clout or reputation helps with that. Having Once you've had shows which have performed well, you can mention that in your emails.
Yeah.
Once you've had reviews are really useful to get. I'd recommend
Yeah.
people, if they want to do a regular show, trying to get reviews from local papers or reviewers. Again, that has a very low response rate, maybe even lower than venues I found, but we have had success with a few people. I probably sent emails to like 20 different places, and we did get reviewers from 3 of them, which was great.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
were the Everyday Magazine, Bristol 24/7, and Epigram. So if people want to try contacting them, they might be more amenable. But if you just contact people and offer them 2 free tickets to come see your show, put a bit of a description of what the show is, and if they might come along and review it, and if it's a good review, then you can use it
Yeah.
as
Great
credits in your
idea.
marketing. Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'd recommend people do that. But again, it might not be a good review, but then you can just ignore it.
Yeah, you don't publish the ones that aren't very good. You just go for the ones. It's like getting, when if you're in business like myself, and collect your client testimonials because that kind of proof of concept. And something else I'm thinking about as we're talking is like, when I go and see something like This Is Your Musical, I always get an email back going, if you enjoyed it, put it on Google, put it on TripAdvisor, give us a rating kind of thing. So they are very proactively like collecting audience responses. And I know the bit does as well for the things. So that's another thing for people. If you're doing shows, it's kind of like reaching out to people to go, talk about how great it was, because people, especially in the world we live in now, this very modern world, it's like, that can make a difference to people if they find things online that say how great a time they had. It all helps to make a decision, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And audience engagement is an important thing as well, which we're still finding tricky, and we don't really know how to fully do that. One thing which has helped is we now get some suggestions from Instagram comments. So in
Okay.
our
Yeah.
interval, we'll tell people, which I think we stole from Showstopper. We'll tell
Yeah.
people to comment on the latest post of our Instagram, and we use that as a suggestion in the second half or something. That's helped get a lot more follows and
Great.
interactions. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's yes, because I remember that from Showstoppers. But that's great because that's good for your social media and it's good for the show, and it kind of ties the two together and makes people feel included.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, fabulous. Okay, so anything else you'd like to share that we haven't covered?
Yes, just one quick thing. One big mistake I made with our business side of it was making a limited company. I would
Okay.
not recommend making a limited company. I would recommend making a sole trader company because I lost a lot of money on tax having to do with limited company stuff. Just because I thought I know nothing about business or tax or money. I'm really new to that whole thing, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I thought limited companies sounded right. What I wanted to do, be a company. I wanted that title and stuff like that. But it just ended up having to pay a lot more in corporation tax and stuff like that. So making a sole trader, you avoid all that, and it's also a lot easier to file your tax returns. Also, some banks give you a free tax accounting software when you make a business account with them. So NatWest is the one I use. I made a business account, which is a sole trader account, and they gave me free access to something called Free Agent, which is a tax accounting software. And you just have to put into it your income, your expenses, and then it will do it all for you, and it will even send it to HMRC for you. So that was a lifesaver. That was a lot easier.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so a caveat on that. If you're thinking of setting up any type of company, get some professional advice on what to do.
Yeah.
We're not financial advisors, so don't necessarily follow that. So there's pros and cons, to being a sole trader or being a limited company, and liabilities and all of that kind of stuff. But yes, if you want to keep your finances separate in an improv troupe or show, then research what the different options are and which ones would be best, I think is a good thing. And I think this is one of the the reasons I started this discussion is like, because if we're trying to make money but we don't understand how money works, it's very difficult to do that, or it's easy to get overwhelmed and create chaos because we don't have actually any structures or any understanding of how to do it or how it works, or the ramifications, as you found, of actually making money. And that has different things that we need to be aware of as well. But yeah, that's great. Okay, so anything else?
I think that was it. That was all I could think of. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I don't know if you've got any more questions or.
No, that's been really useful because it's useful to have, because you've got that one thing which is promoting and running shows, which is great, which is what we focused on. So yeah, very different to the other two conversations. So it's interesting just to get lots of different viewpoints on the topic. So yeah, great. So thank you everyone for watching, and we'll do another discussion very soon. Bye.
Thank you.